Hey everyone, welcome to the 469th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Charles Coleman, J.A., and Alexander Valhouli. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Unlow. Today we've got a Matt and Oren special on the books. We're talking deep thoughts. We're going into our psyche, just unpacking everything. I'm going to hypnotize Oren and maybe make him bark like a dog, or at least teach him to stop smoking. No, we've got some big ideas that we've been talking about off the mic for the last few weeks, and we've had a slew of great guests. So we thought, let's sneak into Matt and Oren episode real quick.
Yeah, and just because I love transparency, I'm gonna admit that we actually had an amazing guest scheduled for tonight that rescheduled, and I was like, I feel like I've been having some deep thoughts lately. Should we just record anyway?
Yeah,
and so we did.
I feel proud of us because we could have maybe done a really short episode with this person, but
we're too excited to talk to this person.
He's pretty high on my list, honestly. We've been talking about trying to get this person on for a long time, so I wanted to give him enough time to really dig in with us. Also, and we'll talk about this person for real when they actually do the show, but I suspect that they're one of those guests, not unlike Laura Murphy, where it was like, oh, we have so much history in common, so many friends in common, so much background in common that it's a very easy, fun, quick conversation. And I think that this person doesn't realize that yet.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I classify it more. Sometimes we have guests on that we personally want them to like us. And
Sure. That's most of them, though.
Yeah, but sometimes we're like, okay, yeah, they made a movie that's got J-Lo in it. Let's talk to them,
Yeah, sure.
And other times it's like, oh, this is a name that's been bubbling up in our universe for the last 10 years. And it's exciting to talk to them. So
totally.
Anyhow, but deep thoughts, I think I posted this thing on Instagram today about shooting in LA, and you had also kind of reacted to some Instagram post, and we're talking about some interesting thoughts you've had recently about kind of the state of the industry and the state of our mental health, I guess, in the industry.
In the way that we decide to participate in the industry. And I just want to say, I'm going to say it at the top of the episode, just to get it out of the way, that our perspective is purely as directors. And so that is a privileged situation. Like the things that we're going to be talking about, shooting in LA versus not, and the nature of the industry and how you participate in all that stuff, the way that we are paid, and the fact that people are willing to fly us to other parts of the country so we do not have to exclusively work in Los Angeles is a tremendous privilege that does totally change the conversation for people. You know what I mean? Like a production designer we don't get to fly those crew members with us when we're going to shoot other places. And so that narrows the focus of how we interpret and experience everything that's going on right now.
Yeah.
But we live saying it over and over and over again,
Right. Yes. I mean, I suspect 80% of what I say will be factually inaccurate, and that we will get many messages correcting me, but I will probably say them as if they are facts. So I apologize ahead of time.
That's two white guys on a podcast. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure most of the people that will correct me will also be, know-it-all white guys.
Actually. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, here we go.
But I'm happy to be corrected by everyone. I appreciate it and love it. So yeah, let's start with your topic.
Yeah. Okay. But before we get to all of that, let's talk about Patreon for a second. Patreon.com/JustShootItPod is the place where you can throw us a buck or two to help keep the show going. You're paying for our buddy Kevin O'Yang, hitting it out of the park, doing such great work, keeping these long, rambling, aimless conversations into something that is hopefully listenable. And truly, your support
keeps the mics on.
It does keep the mics on. I think we probably would have stopped if we didn't have Patreon. That's probably true, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Patreon is also kind of proof that people are listening,
Sure.
Because we still don't really have amazing stats. I guess we get, we have some ads that run and we get some ad stats, but the Patreon is kind of maybe
it's the real
listening. Yeah. It's people actually maybe care a little bit. They have the fear that will go away, which is a real fear.
Yeah.
We've got lots of podcasts to make.
Big time. Just very, very busy. Very busy. We actually kind of are. But on that note, actually, let's talk about the first topic. So everyone knows It's been a hard many years for the film industry, right? 2 strikes, a pandemic. It's been rough. And Los Angeles has been hit really hard. And we'll talk about every once in a while, something goes viral. That's just like the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And all of that is true. And especially like during the strikes, if you were like following like cruise stories, do you follow that Instagram account?
No, I don't think so.
It's really actually a great account. And also credit where it's due. They had a pretty incredible story recently where a young boy was terminally ill and really wanted to see the Minecraft movie, and that community like came together and like got him to see the Minecraft movie before the film came out, got all these incredible personal messages from the cast, like really showed up. So no disrespect to Cruise Stories as a community, but as a beacon of community, I found it to be, as an example, just like a place where people were congregating, and I just found myself getting really depressed. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it was a lot of stories of like, oh, I haven't worked in 18 months and like our savings is gone, and all of this really, really hard, true stuff.
And that is, I mean, to be fair, it is like something that we enjoy. We enjoy commiserating with people and directors, and it makes us feel
100%.
When times are slow, or when we lose a job, or we don't know where the next job is coming from. We like to feel like we're not the only ones doing that, because if all you did was just follow other filmmakers and DPs and stuff on Instagram, then it would seem like everyone's just working all the time nonstop. Absolutely.
And also, you don't post the photos where you're not working most of the time. You only post the photos where you are working. And so if you're a director and you're just like on your feed, you're just only seeing people working, then it feels like, oh, well, I must not be the only one. Or I must be the only one who's not working. All of which is to say, I think social media like really exacerbates all of these very legitimate feelings that people are having. All of that said, I think that I have noticed a thread of discourse in the filmmaking community that gains more engagement, gains more clicks, talking about how the sky is falling, talking about how AI is coming to take our jobs, and Hollywood's totally out of touch, and Snow White didn't make any money, or Mufasa didn't make any, like Hollywood's tanking, and, we're never going to get back to pre-COVID era numbers. And as a person with a podcast, I think about that all the time and how we present ourselves. And, I think you and I oftentimes lean into our personal dynamics. And, if one of us is saying one thing and the other one, doesn't completely agree, we might dig our heels in more on the opposing side for the sake of conversation. And so I feel like I'll talk to people all the time who are like, oh, hey man, I love what you said about this, or like, you're so right, like things are bad or whatever, when I'm mostly just kind of trying to be the other side of the coin. Like, if things are going great for Oren, I'll be like, well, they're not going great for everyone, like just as a voice of reason. Anyway, a long preamble to say there was a producer whose name is Alex Sachs, who is on TikTok, and I think she's really great. She's done a ton of great work. I think she actually did that Amy Schumer movie, Kind of Pregnant, that I frankly loved, even though I don't think everyone unanimously agrees with that.
Yeah. The one that I posted.
I love my
Instagram about it.
I really liked it. Yeah. Yeah. I had a great time. I like chuckled on an airplane alone watching it many times.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. As an airplane watch, an airplane watch is just totally different.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I'd be happy to watch it in a movie. I wish I watched it in a movie theater, frankly. That's not the point. The point is, a producer who I admire brought up all this rhetoric, and kind of said explicitly like, hey, I know that the industry is really hard and I'm going to be a success. I decided to be a success. And so I'm going to focus my energy on that. And so it's totally valid that people need that sense of community and need to commiserate, but it does not feed me. It does not make me feel better. It does not galvanize me, or it saps my energy rather than fueling me in some way. And so I'm not going to participate in it. And I'm going to focus on my goals and go get there. And I think that that's really, she posted it weeks ago now, and I've thought about it all the time, and wanted to bring it up to you because I tend to really think that it's the right perspective. I don't want to lean into positive or toxic positivity, like you don't want to be in denial. Yeah, for sure. Like people who are denying things or shutting things out or not acknowledging the realities of the circumstances. But again, as directors, we can just focus on the things that we can focus on. We can make our own work. We can build new connections. We can network. We can show more people our work and book work that way. And I think feast or famine, I think we have pretty good gigs and pretty good lives, basically, is what I'm saying. So focusing on building more and creating more opportunity for our friends and peers and the people who we've worked with for decades is what I'm interested in, basically.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, trying to keep things positive. To me, there's like this, just this undeniable country that we live in society that it's capitalistic, and with this show, we're in a show business is a business, and there's like the rules of supply and demand, and it's really easy to be upset, that you met with 50 people and no one hired you,
Yeah.
You see on Twitter, people doing 10 rounds of revisions on their screenplay with various studio development execs, never getting paid anything, or producers, and then being pissed off about it, But, those people agreed to do those things.
Yeah.
And any of those people could have gone to a different industry that maybe is less fun or less appealing or less glamorous or, safer. And like they could have been engineers, though. I mean, engineering is being thrown upside down now with AI, but they could have gone to law school or medical school or learned a trade, or fixed cars or made, windmills.
And frankly, the big difference between saying going to law school or engineering is an even better example, and going to film school is like the quote unquote safe plan, even if they were disrupted recently, like that's a bait and switch. Like if you're an engineer, you go into a great engineering school, you got a great engineering job, and all of a sudden you're in trouble because of AI, that's a bait and switch. It's totally legitimate to be upset. With filmmaking, we knew it was risky. To your point about supply and demand, we have always known there is more supply than there is demand for our job.
Like 200 movies are made a year, by studios. And for you to be one of those 200. I signed up
for it at 18. That was and then stuck it out. Said, okay, I'm going to continue to do this.
Right. Well, that's, I guess, kind of the conclusion I've come to is commiserating, reading, a successful screenwriter on Twitter talking about how they had to sleep on couches for 10 years because nobody bought anything. And then all of a sudden they wrote like the one screenplay that got, A Quiet Place, some giant hit that put them on the map. To me, that is actually a positive, it's like, okay, I failed over and over and over, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to make it eventually. And that's why I think you and I love to speak to older filmmakers that got successful later in life. I think we love to talk about people's failures. We love to ask people how they paid their bills and, while they were working on their screenplay for 10 years.
And frankly, part of why I think it's worthwhile to talk about commercials, right? Because you and I are slightly different. We both love commercials, but I think you embraced commercials wholeheartedly earlier than I did. And it's to me a way of facilitating a lifestyle without winning the Quiet Place lottery ticket, which I think is frankly a more important story to illustrate, even though it's less fun, right? Like to say to a filmmaker, like, hey, just because you didn't get to make one of the 200 movies that came out this year, that doesn't mean you can't still have a good life practicing your art and craft and do that other stuff on the side. That to me is a story that's really important to tell to our community.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, on the back, but you know what I mean? Like, it's that's not the fun, sexy story,
Yeah. I mean, I do think commercials are like sexy, and like a Super Bowl commercial or something is sexy.
Yeah.
And I personally have always like been into advertising. I just didn't, when I first got into filmmaking as a career, I had no idea how you got into advertising. It just seemed like this impenetrable thing, like the 30-second commercial, which is what I liked. I liked the Geico commercials and Little Caesars commercials, but I had zero clue of how to even get remotely close to getting hired for that job. But I had a good idea of how to make YouTube videos and how to try to make things go viral and how to get noticed by people that cared about web series and web videos, and people that were open to kind of newer, younger filmmakers. And so I think, eventually we found things, and we've ridden the trends, the Funny or Die and the College Humor and all those things that we were like, oh, we've made it. Now we have a career doing narrative directing. And then those outlets completely vanished. And even you and I talked earlier today about how like, a place like Quibi that was like, hey, we're going to make these high end TV shows for people to watch on their phones. And it totally died. It was like a huge bomb. But today there is a lot of production of these like vertical shows that people are watching on their phones that, I just saw something today that like those apps combined, like the 3 main apps have been downloaded like 34 million times, and that they're pretty expensive. Some of them charge like $80 a month to have access to their library of these like kind of very addictive shows that all end with a cliffhanger. They have these like 2-minute episodes, and they're filling this gap. And they said the listenership is like 70% female. I think there's a lot of kind of like true crime, romantasy, like kind of.
Yeah. It's a lot of romance stuff. Have you seen any of them?
Not really.
It's like,
I've seen trailers.
Carrying my boss's baby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that before.
Yeah. You just kind of bounce them.
Yeah. Give
It's
a pacifier.
It doesn't seem super dramatic to me.
But yeah, so I think I like that kind of the bigger idea that you're bringing up of like, we can complain, but it doesn't mean that we should surrender to our depression. We chose this. Everyone knew that it's hard. I think when we're 20, 25, we're like, that's fine. We'll just, we're willing to slum it, but when you're 40, 45, it's like a little bit harder.
Sure.
And that is kind of like the thing that my deep thought today, kind of stems from this video I saw online. This DP, I know Mike Ray has posted this video of Adam Scott and Rob Lowe talking about how nothing shoots in LA. Adam Scott said he has an office at Raleigh Studios and that the lot is like empty, and he used it. His first thing he ever shot, Radford. First thing he ever shot was on a backlot, and he thought, oh, this is it. You just shoot everything on backlots in LA because that's like what Hollywood is supposed to be. If you've seen Blazing Saddles or Pee Wee Herman or whatever, that's what the picture of Hollywood is. These backlots, Universal Studios.
And the reason I'm certain that it's Radford is because B. Shaheen, producing partner, worked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Grand Crew. And so, especially during Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I would go see her all the time. Like we'd have like a little meeting or we'd have lunch, or like they lent us their offices to cast out of and stuff like that. So like I was on that lot during the time that they're describing, and it was electric.
Yeah. And it's Radford's owned by CBS, right? Which is owned by Paramount.
But it's kind of like a small little Burbank lot. It's not like it's not
like the main Paramount lot.
You wouldn't shoot Pee Wee, that lot.
Right.
And it was still bustling, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all like, obviously COVID changed a lot of this stuff. This like the physicality of the physicality of filmmaking has changed. 99% of our planning is done over Zoom and phone and text and emails. And before we used to share offices together and look over each other's shoulders, which was amazing. But so they talked about this and they said, Adam Scott asked Rob Lowe, he said, what if we were shooting Parks and Rec today, what are the chances that it would shoot in like, Budapest? And Rob Lowe was like 100% chance. There's no chance it would shoot in LA. Nothing shoots in LA. And Rob Lowe had a show, according to him, that was about to go and about to film. And then they said, hey, we can't shoot it in LA. We got to shoot it in New York. And he said, no, I don't want to move to New York. And so they canceled the whole show because they just couldn't shoot it in LA. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. And I really don't mean to alienate our listeners that don't live in LA and that have zero connection to LA, because I know we have a huge chunk of our listenership does not live in LA.
I do think it is important in so much, even if you're outside of Los Angeles, I think it does represent the same sort of mentality. It's just typified in a way, but like, we have some friends in Nashville I was seeing like posts with the exact same sentiment of like, oh my God, it's never been this dry in Nashville ever.
Oh yeah. I have friends in London that are like, why is all production leaving us?
Yeah.
And it's not, the thing about LA, I was thinking about this today, is like Hollywood is where films were invented, It's where the first animated film ever, Snow White, was made by, done by Walt Disney in Los Angeles, like MGM, Warner Brothers, all those people, United Artists, Charlie Chaplin, Laurel and Hardy. Like I live like less than half a block away from one of the most famous Laurel and Hardy movies, where it was filmed on the Music Box steps by my house. Like we started this industry and there's a reason it thrived here. We have great weather. We have a lot of space. We had, it was the Wild West a little bit back then. We had less regulation and we had a lot of people just coming here to work in this business. And so I'm not saying that it should, like there's a reason why we talk about LA and why we live here, why you went to USC and why you moved to Hollywood, why I moved from San Francisco into Hollywood, right? Is yes, we're in California, but we wanted to come to where everyone is, where all where all the actors are, where all the best crews are, where all the gear is, where all the innovations, where all the studios, where all the development execs, where all the writers were that affect the entire world. And of course, there's huge industries in China and Bollywood and Europe, but we are like the biggest exporters of movies, right? And it all kind of stemmed here. And that's why we're so bummed about losing things from LA. And I think like what's happened over the last 5 to 10 years from my personal experiences, I've just been getting older, right? So I'm just not slumming it. Like I can't just microwave dinners, for every meal. I have kids, I have a house, we have cars, we have schools. In LA, there's very few places in LA where you live where you can just like safely like let your kids walk to school alone. It's like also, really hard to raise kids here.
Those places are the most expensive. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
If you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in like South Pasadena or something, it's like it's $2.5 million. Like just starting like for the worst version, and you're not even guaranteed like a great school or like your kids can ride around their bikes in the neighborhood, right? Like all these things that we want not as filmmakers, but as humans, right? Is to be able to raise kids here. And it's also like a super kind of segmented landscape here, right? Like you live in North Hollywood, I live in Silver Lake, relatively close, but we never see each other, and if you have a friend that lives in Santa Monica,
maybe,
or Culver City or El Segundo, like Manhattan Beach, like it's like the only time I ever see those people is like if we're working on something together that requires filming, So it's like, LA just as a town is like really difficult to thrive in, regardless of what industry you're in, right? It's really difficult to raise a family in. It's really difficult to buy a house in. And it wasn't always like this. But then on top of that, all this production leaving here, is really an issue. And I kind of wanted to get into like the specifics of what I'm seeing the issues are, because right now there's these proposed solutions. We have our governor, Gavin Newsom, and Karen Bass, our mayor of LA, saying things like, "Oh, we're going to increase the tax credits, like $700 million. We're going to give these incentives to studios and stuff to come to LA." But the truth is, like you and I are never going to get any of these incentives. Maybe if you make an indie film, you might get like,
and it has to be structured in a really specific way in order for that to work.
Yeah. It's really, those might appeal to a Netflix or an Apple or some big studio, which is obviously valuable.
Yeah, I'm okay with, honestly. Now we're shifting the conversation, I think, is a little bit like, it's like actors need to make a living, crew members need to make a living, like cinematographers and directors and executives are kind of the people who can travel the most easily. And it is miserable, right? Like if you're a working director, that means you don't live in Los Angeles full time anymore, right? Like all of our most workingest friends, what a sentence, but our busiest friends just aren't in town.
Yeah. Whether it's a TV show that they're shooting in Italy. I mean, I guess this is the crazy thing. It used to be like, okay, you go to Prague, you go to Thailand, you go to Mexico City. It used to be like those places are so cheap, but now people are going to Austin. They're going to Dallas. They're going to Atlanta. They're going to Italy to shoot. Like, why is LA become so difficult to shoot in that these other expensive places? Literally, why is New York City, potentially the most expensive city in America, cheaper to film in than LA? These tax incentives that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are suggesting they might help someone. They won't help anyone that you or I know specifically. That Netflix show is still going to go probably shoot in Italy. A lot of things are still going to go film in Vancouver. You and I can't bring 100 actors and 20 crew members to Vancouver and in a writer's room and all this stuff. Like for all of us that are in Hollywood because we love film and we love filmmaking and we want to work in indie film and we want to work in episodic stuff and we want to work in commercials or other short form things, like none of those incentives are are helpful to us. And also the other thing that I see all the time is people posting on Instagram, let's stay in LA, there's this whole group about staying in LA, and it's like, yeah, of course we want to stay in LA. But going back to like my theory that this is a capitalistic society, like people are so mad. Today, some DP, I posted about that, that Rob Lowe, Adam Scott thing on Instagram, and some DP wrote to me, he's like, yeah, your suggestions of like solutions are interesting, but like also the studios could just pay us a living, fair living wage and pay into our health and pension.
Sorry, just to make sure that because you said a few different things. You said like, okay, just real quick, what were your suggestions?
Oh, I was going to get to my suggestions in a second.
Okay.
But I just, this DP was like, it sucks that like Netflix, this richest company in the world, doesn't want to pay us. But
it's like,
why
won't Netflix pay us? But they're never going to.
Why would Netflix, if they can make a show for $30 million, why would they spend $60 million? It's just bad business. There's a reason they're so successful. It's because they are business people.
It's a similar sort of version of like, has anyone ever paid more taxes than they owe?
Probably me, not intentionally.
Sure. Intentionally. No one has intentionally ever paid more taxes than they owe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, you can be mad at capitalism, but it's not about fairness. It's about, creating the best product for the cheapest price, right? Like kind of optimizing those two numbers. So I guess just to kind of get to my point, like when I think about why I have trouble shooting in LA, so I've had this year, I think really, it's already March. I've only had, I think, 2 shoots. That'd be true.
That's probably true. Based on, it's March 4th, 12th. God, I said 4th. It's 24th, March 24th.
Yeah. So I had my first kind of shoot of the year was in Colombia. And then I had like I talked about my other shoot here that spanned like 3 weeks because things kept getting pushed and stuff. And it was like a 5-day shoot too. So it kind of, it took its time. But my next shoot, and that was in LA, luckily, and it was a real fight to get in LA. And I had to convince everyone like, hey, we had this fire, like you should come shoot in LA. It was like a whole thing. And it was a union shoot because, you have to make like kind of longer shoots in LA Union. And they probably, ended up spending more money than they would have in another place. But though we had amazing talent. I mean, shooting in LA is awesome when you get to do it. But my next shoot is going to be shooting in Toronto. And my shoot after that, if I'm going to find out in a couple of days if I get it or not, but it's going to be shooting in Austin. And so every time on every one of those shoots, I pitched shooting in LA.
Why Austin?
Yeah. Well, so these are what I'm seeing from my producers as the issues of shooting in LA. And I'd love to, I'm not a producer and I don't see the line items.
They don't show us the line items because they don't want us to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think they don't mind, but they're trying to let us be creative while they're worrying about all the, BS. But sometimes it's hard for us to assess why certain decisions are made, even though we're the directors. In theory, we got the job, we earned the job, we should be involved in the decision making. For instance, where we're shooting. But so from what I understand, these have been the challenges of my shoots that I've tried to do in LA. My first shoot of the year, my next shoot that's coming up in Toronto, and the shoot after that in Austin, which again, I'm not booked yet. And have a 50-50 chance of getting, I don't want to jinx myself. But first of all is permits. Okay. In LA, you work with this organization called Film LA, which cries all the time that it's losing money. I have no idea how. The prices of permits just keep going higher and higher. We permitted Santa Monica Beach for my shoot. It's a public beach. It owns, we already, our tax money already pays to go towards keeping it afloat. We're paying for the lifeguards. We're doing all this stuff just as citizens of LA. For some reason, we still have to spend like an extra $3,500 just to permit the beach. Right. And then we have to hire a fire marshal, because we have a generator. Then we have to hire police officers just because we're parking trucks on the street. Like the permit, then we have to hire people.
Can I interject actually?
Yeah.
Because I saw a story on Crew Stories about this specifically.
Oh yeah. Go on.
So I'm just going to summarize real quick. This is the counterpoint basically to why this is all happening. Okay, so Film LA is a contractor with the city of Los Angeles. It's unincorporated LA County, so it's Culver, Santa Monica, it's Diamond Bar, La Cañada, all of the school districts. It's just a huge, huge jurisdiction, right? But so back in the day, people used to have film offices. Anywhere that had any real film industry would have a film office, but most cities and jurisdictions don't have those anymore. So Film LA is an outsourced institution through the city of LA. They're contracted basically to deal with all of this. So they are not publicly funded, I think is the takeaway there. So then Film LA makes $931 for each application of up to 5 locations, not including base camps, crew parking, catering. So in reality, it could be 15 locations or more per $931. And the city pays nothing to Film LA. So basically all of the money they're getting is just through those applications. And so I mean, I think that's kind of the takeaway. Like,
you're saying that they don't make a lot of money, but
they don't make a lot of money.
I'm saying they don't. Their existence is the problem. Defund Film LA, even though they're not funded at all.
Sure.
Because
you're saying the opposite. Fund Film LA.
I'm saying don't privatize it. I'm saying if the city wants people to film in LA, they should let people film in LA for free. Like. Mm-hmm. I don't think we should be having to pay for permits. I don't know why I have to pay $3,500 to film on the beach in Santa Monica.
What I'm saying is I think, having just parsed that, is that no one is paying Film LA. Like, if our permits is what it pays the people to, manage all of those applications and permits and stuff. So somebody has to pay the people who work at Film LA. Should that be the city or should that be funded by film production?
I mean, I think that Santa Monica Beach, for instance, has definitely people that maintain that beach. That you should be able to call them and say, hey, we want to film here. Are you available?
Sure.
And
there should be somebody whose job is to manage all of the people who want to film, right?
Yeah, there already is someone that manages events there.
Sure.
Right? Like that same person. It's not like thousands of people want to film on Santa Monica Beach every day.
Sure.
Like you can look it up. You can see how many beach permits were granted this year. It's like literally the entire year, it's like 1,000, with all beaches combined in California. It's not an insane amount of people. It's, you're not every day, like people are trying to bring like 100-person crew to Santa Monica Beach. Yeah. Not to mention we live on the coast of the longest state in the, in the continental US. Like we have a lot of beach, but we don't just have to pay for these permits. We have to, if we want to park trucks on the street, you have to hire police officers for like $85 an hour, which is a number I'm just making up, but I'm sure it's somewhere around there for some minimum number of hours. Even if you're going to film there for 2 hours, you have to pay them for like 10 hours or something. Mm-hmm. And they're just, retired police officers are just sitting there. You're just paying them. They're not doing anything, like you're literally, it's if you parked your personal vehicle on the street, you wouldn't need the police officer there. Mm-hmm. You need the fire marshal there because there's a generator in case like a fire break, like, there's all these things that there's all these people there. You need, do you know that if there's a pool or you're even like put one person in the water, you have to hire a lifeguard. And look, all this stuff makes sense in theory, but when you ask me, why do you shoot in Austin? Why do you shoot in Atlanta? Why do you shoot in, anywhere else in the US? It's because they don't make those, you don't have those rules. Like when I shot my feature in Rochester, the police came out on their own accord for fun and helped shut streets down for us. They enjoyed it and everyone was like, helping us. And, we of course don't want to block traffic. We don't want to like create trouble for people, but the construction in LA is like 1,000 times worse than any filming,
Sure.
Like Sunset Boulevard, there's a new building because they want to add so much housing in LA. Like they'll shut down like 2 lanes on Sunset Boulevard for the entire day, for months at a time. And like no one's moving. Like those things, and they don't have police officers there. Mm-hmm. Like I just think that if you want to incentivize filming to happen in LA and California in general, it's not just about like giving Netflix like $100 million in tax incentives. It's about letting normal human beings that moved here to work in Hollywood.
Facilitating film production in other ways besides tax incentives.
Yeah. And Film LA, like, sure, they can be helpful in ways, but it's like you have to pay them extra money to expedite things. Someone on Instagram told me that they work banker hours. So it's like you call, like after 3 p.m., you call at lunch, like no one is answering you. Like, you know how filmmaking works. Like we're rushing around, we're putting out fires left and right, and they're making it really difficult. And on top of that, people that own locations, because the rent is so high in LA, because like a restaurant is charging $20 for a sandwich, no restaurant is going to let you rent it for the day for less than like $15,000, like Where in Austin, you could probably get that same restaurant for $1,000,
Yeah.
and leave half of it open so people could still eat. Like,
Well, so everything else, I think you're saying is institutional, right? But the private business, what's the solution there? What?
so my solution for the private business is, again, if California is serious about wanting to have film production here, is that's who gets the tax credits,
Yeah.
Don't give it to Netflix and Apple and Amazon. Give it to, Toast or whatever restaurant is and where Toast used to be on 3rd Street.
2005.
Give it to Bob's Big Boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
no.
They're shooting Entourage at Toast. So let's.
Yeah. Give a huge tax credit to the Standard Hotel.
I saw Luke Perry at Toast once.
Oh, that's cool. I love Toast. That was like my this guy that lived in my building worked there, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it costs like $10,000 to shut down Toast." And this was in 2005.
Sure.
I imagine how much it would cost today.
Is it still around?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we would know.
Yeah.
But like, get the Sofitel, whatever. Get a hotel like the Le Meritage, like these places. Give them tax credits to allow filming. Don't they'll still get a location fee, but they get like $2,500 a day instead of $25,000 a day. Like, have the state incentivize businesses, especially on like during their slow times. Hotels aren't maybe doing a ton of business during the dead of winter in the middle of the week. Like, hey, say if you let film crews come in and film here, and they'll have insurance. Like, if there's any damage done, like, of course you don't want to risk your business, but the state of California is going to give you, $10,000 of tax credits a day for doing this, and really incentivize the businesses, like homeowners. Like, hey, if you let someone film in your house, we'll split the location fee with the production. We're not going to give you cash, but we'll give you a tax break or tax credits. Like that $700 million that they're giving in tax credits to huge studios, like, spend that. Do you know how many locations you could subsidize for like thousands of commercials, short films, production, student, like all these things? So locations is the next thing. Like I think I told you, for my shoot that I needed to film at a resort, we had budgeted $15,000 a day for the resort, and we ended up getting the best deal we could find by far was $60,000 a day. We ended up spending 4 times as much money on locations because no location in California and LA is incentivized to help productions out.
Sure.
They just look at it as a pain in the butt, but we could change that. And then the third thing, and this is like super, I used to be scared to talk about this in public because it was just taboo, but there is this issue of unions that are very active in LA and Hollywood. And I am a member of a union. My wife's a member of a union. Your wife's a member of a union. We're like, my screen just did a funny thing. Let some fireworks out. We're huge believers in, we're very pro-union, but that needs to be, the unions need to look at the landscape, especially in my opinion, the commercial landscape, and just be realistic about what their requirements are. So I personally think DGA is like, the union that I'm in is the most fair. You have to hire a DGA director and a DGA first AD, and sometimes a DGA second AD if you have a lot of extras, and sometimes a production manager. So, like 4 people on a medium-sized set. And those people you have to pay into their health and pension. And I think that's reasonable. And, if a director directs a commercial, the commercial can run 1,000,000 times. The director will not get paid any extra. There's no residuals. There's no reason for a production, for a client. There's no reason for Coca-Cola to be like, oh, we don't want it to be DGA because then we won't be able to run the commercial. Like you have zero rights as the director.
There's no limiting factor is what you're saying.
Yeah. They can do any edit they want. You have no final say on anything. And so the DGA, there's a lot of rights on how you're treated, and they help you pay for your health insurance, which is huge. But there's no real disincentive to clients to use DGA directors, which is very different than SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, which I had posted on Instagram that it would be nice if the unions, scaled their rates based on the budgets. And someone had written back to me like, oh, SAG does change their rates based on budgets. Yeah, of course, you can do a student film and not pay your actors anything, or pay them deferred. Sure. Do a short film, make it SAG, and pay them like $150 a day. All that stuff is totally reasonable. But my wife, who has been on like multiple HBO shows, is that have been Emmy nominated and Emmy winning shows get significantly less money from those shows than she was in this Toyota commercial 2 years ago. She's in one shot for like, I don't know, maybe 7 frames of screen time, and she made like $10,000 on that. Like, does that make sense that an actor that is in 7 frames of a commercial with no dialogue makes 10 times as much money as they get when they're on a HBO, on a Max show that's distributed to the entire world, and she gets residuals from that, a 44-cent check from HBO every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, the acting stuff is really complicated because, and we've talked about it on the show before, and we don't need to go into it too much, but like there internally at SAG, there's this significant struggle between, I think, an old guard that frankly lives on residuals, right? And a younger generation that is less worried about residuals and wants to just work more, basically.
Yeah.
And the old guard is like, well, the reason that we can retire and live well is because we make residuals. And if you give that up, then there's no such thing as a working actor anymore, right?
Right. But I believe like 100% that their residual structure is ending up in less people getting residuals.
Yeah, that's true.
And the actors being less employed, SAG members being less employed, and in general, actors as a whole making less money because of this.
Do you know any working actors? Like, really? Do you know what I mean? Like, we know people who book all the time, but like people who are making like a real living exclusively on acting at this point?
The actor in the piece that you just showed me.
Sure.
Right? There's a lot of people like him, and they are
describing FICOR.
Yeah, financial core actors. I know a handful that make a living that are great actors. Mm-hmm. They book a ton of commercials, and they are financial core, which means they're non-voting SAG members. They give up some rates from the union in order to be allowed to work in non-union and union shoots. And the incentive to go FICOR, I'm sure your wife and my wife are both pressured to do this, is humongous because no commercial wants to work with SAG anymore because they make it prohibitive, and they're really quite aggressive on making sure that that you make your commercial SAG if you're working with a brand that is like, remotely known. Now I have zero issues with SAG in film and TV. Like all that stuff is fair. Like for TV, a day rate, SAG session rate is $700. Yeah, pay an actor $700 to come for the day. But in a commercial, an actor that their hand appears in frame is getting $10,000, and you can run the commercial for like 6 months, and that's it. You can't even post it on the internet after that. It's like, it's so out of scope with the reality of the finances. Now, look, if you're in an Apple commercial, shouldn't you get $10,000 because you're wearing an iWatch and you're showing off the new features? Sure. Because the budget for Apple marketing is $500 million. The budget to market the iWatch, $250 million. But if you are
the Squatty Potty, maybe
the Squatty Potty, even like Popeyes commercial Popeyes has a new golden chicken sandwich. It's going to be one item of 100 items that they're advertising and telling people about. Like, does every single face that you see in that commercial deserve $10,000? Like, I mean, deserve is the wrong way. But if your budget to make that entire commercial is $250,000, how much are you going to allocate to the cast, to the actors? Mm-hmm. If it was up to SAG, it would be $500,000 of that $250,000 because you have a restaurant full of people. So it's leading people that write commercials and produce commercials to put way less actors in them.
To be hiring fewer people.
Yeah. Now, if you have a celebrity in it, it has to be SAG usually because, most celebrities are SAG, like especially actors. And then, I had a shoot in Mexico. We had a celebrity in it. We went to Mexico. She's the only SAG actor in it, and everyone else had to be cast from Canada. They had to be cast from Mexico. They had to be cast from other places.
You couldn't hire Americans.
Yeah, we couldn't hire great actors that I know. And I was begging them. I'm like, let me bring a non-union FICOR. Let me bring SAG. Like, no. Like, we can't. It changes the budget from $100,000 on actors to $1 million on actors. It's just totally not tenable. And if SAG was just worked with us to figure out what makes sense for a commercial, and it used to be when they made these contracts like 30 years ago, yeah, you make a commercial, it's on TV during Seinfeld, a bazillion people see it,
Sure.
Like 30 million people see
And
it.
the only place that you can play commercials is on TV.
Yeah. And now it's like,
Yeah.
there's a commercial on the gas station pump, you know, if you drive a combustible engine.
Which you don't. Yeah.
No,
How would you know, Oren?
I assume they still have
you miss Maria
there's a
Menounos
commercial,
on, Pump
on
TV or whatever.
on the screen in the shuttle at the airport, like they're, in the elevator, like there's the one on Instagram, on TikTok, there's banners there. Like the diversification of where commercials are seen just means that there's so many outlets, and so few, each outlet on its own is valued so much less than it used to be. Yet SAG's rules about like how you have to pay for this have not changed, at all. They do have some stuff. They had some stuff for cable only, and they have some stuff for internet only, but it's still really expensive. Like I had to shoot at the end of last year that we kind of we were going to do non-union, and SAG basically came to us and said, hey, this brand, you cannot shoot non-union with it. And they kind of made us go SAG, and it went from a 5-person cast to a 1-person cast. So 4 actors lost their jobs. And then, they had to spend about 10 times as much on the one actor than they were going to send on all the actors combined. And it really compromised like a lot of the other creative that we wanted to do. So that's SAG. And then the other, kind of organization of unions is IATSE is kind of the other big one, in LA, and they work, I think, hand in hand with the Teamsters. And there's, I'll admit, I'm not a member, and I don't know super well. I got some hours back in my grip and electrician days, but they are kind of the soul blood, the lifeline of production in LA. And they are starving for work because so much work is leaving LA. And there's this weird catch-22, which is like when they do get like offered a job that's non-union, many times they take the job and then they call the union and they get the union to flip the job, right? Which means you turn a non-union job into a union job. You've had shoots flip. I've had shoots flip. Like, of course, ideally your shoot is union, right? Of course, you want to pay for people's health insurance. You want to pay for their pension. You want to hire the best people. When you have a union shoot, it's the best crew you can get in the world. When you have a union shoot in LA, we've both had those. But sometimes you just can't afford to. It's not just the health and pension. It's a lot of the rules. Like your art department person can no longer drive the truck. You need to hire a separate person for that. Like transpo units, teams have to expand to be bigger. Everything kind of has to work in a different way. And I do think IATSE actually does make some deals with productions a little bit more amenable than SAG sometimes.
Yeah. I think what you're ultimately advocating for here, Oren, is just a reassessment of what is fair and safe, because I can hear my lefty pinko mentality of like, well, it sounds like we don't have enough money to have a commercial, right? Is a pretty valid response, right? But that's not what you're saying.
Which is saying, okay, so let's not shoot, right?
Sure,
and our goal is to say, how do we shoot? And how do we shoot in LA?
How do we put pension hours in people's pockets? How do we? Yeah.
And I have ideas on how to do it. I think, first of all, from the unions is like, don't accept, if it's a non-union job and you're not willing to work a non-union job, do not accept the job. If you accept a job, like remove this idea of flipping jobs. Like, why would, it's like you're tricking people, it's just so weird. Like, and you'd think that maybe like you get hired, you're a union employee and you get hired a non-union job and they make you work long hours or things are unsafe or something is, someone's mean to you, that's why it's flipped. But every set I've been on that's flipped has been like the rates are higher than the union minimums. The food is great. We're filming indoors in air conditioning, 10-hour days, and then they get flipped, and you're like, there's like nothing we could have done to not flip the shoot. So to me, first of all, don't flip, because once you've had it and I've had it, once our shoots are flipped, our production company loses money on the entire job, right? Because now they have to pay like 30% more, in labor fees than they were planning on. And they have to sometimes, I had to shoot flip and we had to change the entire transpo department because we're a non-union transpo department. And then next time you want to hire your DP and production designer you love, your producer says, hey, we can't hire them. In the best case, but we can still shoot in LA. But in the worst case, and the more common case, like, hey, let's just not shoot in LA Because in Georgia, in Texas, in Florida, none of those places
100% of bad producers.
Productions.
Say that to me.
Right? That's why I'm shooting in Toronto. That's why I shot in Colombia. That's why we shot in Mexico. So, but I want to shoot here. I want to work with the unions. So my idea for unions is, first of all, don't flip shoots. I don't think a lot of union members realize that this ultimately results in you getting hired less. And I get like, oh, I just need 2 more days to get my health insurance. Okay, well, you now just jeopardize like what is it? Picking up pennies in front of a steamroller or whatever. You just jeopardized your entire, year because of this thing. But I think like unions should definitely scale rates based on and residuals based on the budgets. And I think, again, if the state and the city care at all about incentivizing production in LA, I think they should incentivize us to work with unions. I think they should be like, hey, if you work on a union shoot, you have to pay less taxes, or we'll give you a tax credit, or no permit fees if you work with a union. So all of a sudden, we just saved $15,000 on permits, and that's how much money we can spend.
Easy.
To pay this extra 30% for labor. So I think there's so many ways that California can do this. And I have a friend, Jason Rosenberg, shout out, that works in government and politics. And he told me like LA has this like $1 billion deficit with the fires and all this stuff. Like there's no way they can just be giving out money. But I'm saying take that $700 million that Netflix isn't going to use anyway to do their giant Budapest shoot, or they built all these stages in Nevada or whatever. Like don't incentivize us, incentivize us, the people that live here, the little people, the whole production crew framework that exists here, the stages that are here, the mocap places, the LED wall folks, the robots, the
people,
the Trinity operators. Incentivize us to get more, like use that money for us. And also, once you are getting a flow of work here, we're all paying taxes and we're all hiring people. And like the reason they have such a shortfall is because they're making like hundreds of $1 millions less this year than they did like last year, because the people are paying less taxes. People are making less money, and they don't get that it's because everyone's leaving to shoot. Anyhow, that's my rant. That's my deep thought. And I just feel like, I feel like as directors, our job is kind of building on what you were saying, is not to just complain and be sad. It's to look at the problems that we're facing and find a solution. And so I think we need to just spam the governor, spam the mayor, talk to the unions, talk to...
Sounds like somebody should get organized, Oren.
Yeah. And so to me, it's just talking about it on the podcast. But maybe someone who's better at this can team up with us. We can do something. I don't know. I want to make California. I don't want to replace Atlanta's always going to be great for the Marvel movies. Austin's always going to be great for like a certain type of production.
But that wasn't true 20 years ago.
No, but
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it is. I mean, they've invested in the infrastructure in the way that it is not like we've already kind of messed that part up. But the people like you and me that moved to Hollywood to work in film, like we can still be the next wave, and the younger versions of us can be the next wave of like revitalizing Hollywood. But right now, with LA being so impossible to afford to live in and not having any work, it's like why would anyone do it?
Yeah,
so. It's a 180 from our first episode of this podcast 10 years ago, which was about why you should move to LA.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was about film school. I don't know.
It was about film school, but it wasn't very good. That's all great food for thought, Oren. And I think, is always a churn for people. Like I think any working director is always like, why am I here? Why couldn't I have just moved home? I'm flying all over the place anyway. What's the big deal? But I do love the idea of figuring out ways in which to participate in a meaningful way, because it is also something far more tangible and something that we're really, entrenched in, right? And I think you mentioned like the Stay in LA. I think that actually, as a movement and as a petition, is an example of a group of people. I think Sarah Dina Smith, friend of the show, I think is involved with it as well as one of the founding members. But like ways in which people can collectively, act is always going to be a good thing.
Yeah. And like you said, like as directors, we're probably the people that suffer the least from production leaving LA.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But as Angelinos, we suffer because we don't want to leave LA, you know? Anyhow, and it's not just about convenience. It's about like, it's just, you know, we
A way
built
of
this
life.
like an amazing industry here, and we moved here for it, and we're just watching it like evaporate.
Yeah. It's not just about jobs, because, you know, people can get other jobs. It's like, it's our vocation, it's our artistry, it's our identity, it's our community. Yeah.
Anyhow, we'd love to hear from you about this stuff. So please email us, justshoot@gmail.com, or just shoot@gmail.com, or just find us on Instagram and DM us. We would, I don't know. I like kind of had it with the like showmanship of our government leaders saying that they're going to do something about this. And every single thing they suggest seems totally meaningless with the issues that I personally face and the people that I work with face. Yeah. So anyhow, on that note, Enlo, you got a second to endorse something with me?
I do indeed.
Unpaid endorsements.
My endorsement is graph paper. When was the last time you used graph paper, Oren?
I haven't used it much recently, but I've thought about it and talked about it recently because I have a daughter that is in school. You know,
oh, right. So
we buy notebooks, college ruled, like non-college ruled, whatever it's called.
You can go to Staples, get yourself some standard graph paper, $1.49, and like
draw some schematics,
draw some
diagrams.
That's what I did. I love SketchUp. I love, you know, listeners of the show know I like to like DIY stuff. I'm redesigning our pantry, and I built it in SketchUp, and I found it just to be a little bit cumbersome. But partially because it's like a smaller space, and so like walls in 3D, you know, can be a little funky. And I was just like, oh, the intuition of just doing it on paper, pulling out the old ruler and the pencil, and like just drawing it. I became obsessed. It sparked my creativity. I was so into it, and I'm grateful to just have graph paper laying around now as a way to shut out all of the other distractions that I have and like do some kind of like architectural drawing, frankly. Yeah, it's been really great.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good. I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I know you were looking for a fight.
Yeah. I thought you would be like, oh my God, just do it in Blender. What are you doing? You can't light sim on graph
just
paper.
Blend it. I will say this is like, you would have to be at the perfect place of learning 3D software for this suggestion to be useful to you whatsoever. But there is this idea when you put walls or planes in 3D space and 3D software that you can make the wall only visible from one angle and not from the other, not from the backside. I think it's called backface culling, which if you're building like a room, you want to have that on because you want to, if you're looking inside the room at a wall, you want to see the wall. But if you're looking from outside the room at a wall, you want to.
That's exactly what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
You want it to not be seen. So it's if there's an option, I'm sure SketchUp has it, or Smayonnaise, their biggest competitor.
Oh, no, Smayonnaise.
You don't know Smayonnaise? You only use SketchUp. Have you tried Smustard?
You meant Smustard. Yeah, it's a great joke, but Smustard
is better than
yeah.
I like
a great joke for it.
Soy sauce. So, but I'm sure they have a backface culling.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it is really hard to look at room designs. Yeah, that's good. I love graph paper.
Yeah. Kaplan, what you got?
So this is like, again, like the opposite of what I'm talking about, bringing jobs back to LA. And now I'm going to talk about AI that's taking away jobs. But I've been messing around with text to speech stuff. I'm 1,000,000% dedicated to using actors for voiceover because they're directable and text to speech stuff isn't. And I've tried all of it. Like 11 Labs is kind of probably the most famous one. But if you use Google Gemini, it can talk out loud too. And you can just use it on your phone and record your phone and have it just repeat things and kind of get this like VO, but it's never good. Like, you know, you want a good performance, but I was messing around with this new one called Sesame AI, and the website is sesame.com, and you can click on the demo, and they have these conversational voice demos. They have a woman named Maya and a man named Miles, and you just click on whoever you want to have a conversation with, and it calls them, and they just like are like, hey, what's up? What's going on? What do you want to talk about? And I was talking to Maya yesterday, and my daughter came in and she wrote this note on a Post-it while I was talking to her. Hold on, I'm trying to unfold it. It just happens to be here on my desk. She wrote to me, is this a computer? Can I say hi? And my daughter like started talking to her and she was like, what is the deal? Like, are you
talking to it?
Talking to it, but asking her about like asking it where it got its voice and all these things. And it was like, my wife and I were like, this is the end of time.
Yeah, it's hard enough to like be an adult dealing with this stuff, but to be like, you know, at a formative age, having a false relationship with a object is terrifying.
Yeah. And what's funny is, so I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to tell you a script and I just want you to say it back to me in your voice. And so I'm going to call her she was like, cool. And then I said it and then she improvised a little bit. And I was like, could you just stick to the script, please? And then she's like, okay. And so she said it like with no emotion. I was like, no, could do like an excited read, like you're happy. And she was like, went crazy. And then she improvised all these things and went like Zen spiritual. And anyhow, it was like, I'm like, just say what's in your wallet. The Capital One app.
Can I ask why you didn't just record it yourself?
I did, but I don't. First of all, I'm sick. Actually, and I asked a friend too if she could record it, but I'm trying to get like, I'm basically making a director's cut of something.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
New VO.
So it's not temp. It's like
for my website.
Yeah. But it's not the same as like if this were an animatic, I would just do all the voices. Basically.
Oh yeah. My current edit is my voice, and I want to get Kara's voice, but she's kind of been sick too, and I've just been trying to get it out really fast because I think it's a good piece to just have on my reel for certain types of jobs, and I just don't want the VO to be a giveaway that it's a director's cut.
If someone hears your voice and then you're on the call or whatever, they're like, wait a minute, that's a
I was kind of thinking of just posting on Instagram, like, hey, do any of my friends do voiceover and want to do like a free reading for a director's cut for me? I mean, I guess I could pay someone too, but it's like just casting that person and recording them and engineering the whole thing. I've been trying to figure out like the filters, the EQ of like making a voice sound good. And it's a whole career making VO sound good, which it's not my expertise. Anyhow, sesame.com, check it out for a good time. I think if you are drunk, it would probably be really fun to talk to because it like laughs and it like, Kara, my wife, is always like, she hates it when I talk to like female AI voices. Like even Siri and Alexa, they're always like, hey, hope you have a great day. And Kara's like, ugh. Like she's always scowling at the guy.
My wife whispered to Alexa the other day and it whispered back and I did not like it.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's crazy.
They're just telling secrets in the corner.
Well, thank you all for listening to our deep thoughts. Again, feel free to contact us, justshootitpod@gmail.com. DM us on social media or at justshootitpod. And
if you have thoughts on my toxic positivity or Oren's union busting.
Oh, come on. The ultimate goal is to do more union work.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm giving you a hard time.
But you can find me on Instagram. I'm at @okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Metamo across all social media. This episode was edited by Kevin O'Yang, thank you, Kevin, and produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist, Jazar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.